Nearly a month after 14 people died in a deadly UPS plane crash in Louisville, families are taking the shipping giant to court. This lawsuit, filed on behalf of two families whose loved ones were killed, alleges negligence on multiple companies, including UPS, UPS Air, Boeing, GE, and a company responsible for inspections and maintenance of the aircraft. The plane crashed into an industrial park shortly after takeoff. The NTSB preliminary report found that the left engine detached from the plane, as well as evidence of fatigue cracks in the mounting points for the plane's engine. Joining us now, former federal prosecutor Neama Rahmani, to talk more about this lawsuit. Good morning to you, and thank you as always. How difficult is it, and what is necessary to prove negligence in a court case like this?
Morning, good to see you again. So there's really two types of claims here. There's going to be the negligence claim that you mentioned. That's going to be against UPS and its subsidiary UPS Air. But we're also going to see a products liability claim. And you mentioned some of those companies. You mentioned Boeing, which purchased McDonnell Douglas. This was an MD-11 plane, as well as GE, which manufactured the engine. The difference is when it comes to a product, if that product is defectively designed or manufactured, it's actually strict liability. That means the companies are responsible for any harm that it causes. So expect a lot of finger pointing between these four defendants: the manufacturers, the subsidiaries, UPS, which obviously operated the plane with its pilots, as well as the company that was responsible for maintaining and doing the inspection on this plane, which was admittedly older. So the jurors are going to have to sort through responsibility and what percentage, if any, each of these defendants bear.
And that company that you brought up is one of the defendants, San Antonio Aerospace, Inc. They're responsible for inspections and maintenance. So am I wrong to assume there would be a paper trail of maintenance and potential fatigue cracks, which the NTSB noted in their preliminary report?
There would be, and obviously this is an older plane. McDonnell Douglas hasn't been around for quite some time, and if you go with what the NTSB report says and the lawyer for the families, this really was a plane that allegedly shouldn't have been in service anymore, right? This is something that was a lot older, and at least according to the families, that's the reason why it ended up crashing. So whether it was something that UPS should have pulled out of service, whether it's something that should have been identified during that inspection period, because we know, like you said, there is always a report. Everything is documented when it comes to the checks that these planes have to go through. I think we'll know pretty soon in discovery, well before trial, what happened here.
And in this case, Neama, attorneys for the families compared the recent crash in Louisville to a crash that happened 46 years ago. That one was in Chicago, Flight 191. All 271 people on board were killed during takeoff. Are there similarities between that case and this one? And what happened in that instance?
Yeah, obviously, you're going to look at prior instances. You're going to look at history. What they'll do is they'll do different modeling. They'll go back and look at these previous horrific plane accidents to see what happened, right? Was it user error? Was it a product defect? Was it a design defect? Was it something that really the maintenance company should have caught? Because ultimately, that's going to decide who's at fault. Now, fortunately, now we have far fewer plane crashes than we did, decades ago. But those previous crashes are going to be illustrative here, and those are going to be important case studies in a legal case like this.
Right. And another development that has happened subsequently after this crash, the FAA grounded all further flights of this plane, the MD-11, and just days later grounded 9 other similar planes. Legally speaking, what does that indicate to you about the merits of this case?
Well, of course, the FAA and the NTSB are going to be forward-looking as well, not just looking back to see what caused this tragedy. They want to prevent further accidents like this from happening. And admittedly, these are older planes. So the question is going to be, should they even be in service still, right? These are planes that, were manufactured decades ago. I can tell you my mom worked for McDonnell Douglas. She was actually a safety engineer, and she's been retired for quite some time. So this is not the type of plane that's still being manufactured. So the FAA may be saying, hey, we should take a look at all these. I don't know how many there are in circulation, maybe ground them all to prevent something like this from happening again. Now, is that going to be evidence in the case? No. Those are called subsequent remedial measures. And even if Boeing decided to ground those planes or UPS itself, that's not evidence that can be used in the case. And the reason is the courts want to encourage companies to take safety measures going forward without that being used against them as evidence that they knew that these planes were dangerous ex ante or beforehand.
Real quick, I'm short on time, but how do these cases usually end? I mean, the families want accountability. They want someone held responsible for the loss of life, and you can put no number on that. Are they generally settled and families get payouts?
They are generally settled, Marnie, and it really depends on the value of the case. But these are sometimes seven, which are in the millions, or eight, tens of millions when it comes to these types of cases. Sometimes lawyers will hit big for even more than that. But I fully expect the cases to settle, and it's just going to be a question of the apportionment of fault between these defendants, whether they're going to be zero, they're going to be 100%, or something in between. That's really the only question here. Who bears the fault, not what are the damages here for the loss of a loved one.
Yeah, and how do we make sure it doesn't happen again? Neama, thank you so much, as always, for your time.
Thanks, Marnie. Talk soon.